YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today we're ranking every NFL team starting center for the 2022 season. We're going from 32 to 1. We got all these ranking videos rolling out. This is the last of the offensive positions. We're on to defense early next week. Cannot wait for that. We'll start with the defensive tackles. There's a playlist full of all these rankings, so if you join us, we got full NFL coverage here. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. That'll all be much appreciated. Follow us on Twitter. A lot going on there. A lot of updates on the franchise tag players. We've been talking with you guys there. Could there be potential trades coming? We have super follows as well now on Twitter, so check that out if you're interested. Link down below for anything you need. Here's our Twitter. We're talking about Jesse Bates, Orlando Brown, Dalton Schultz a little bit, what everything means. A lot of numbers, declined offers. Orlando Brown, Jesse Bates declining some offers for the teams. We're talking about all that on Twitter, so missing out if you're not following us there. Top 32 centers predicting this upcoming season, and had to predict, there's some position battles, had to predict who will actually be the starting center for some teams. Starting with the Niners, Jake Brendel is the only guy on the 49ers roster who actually has some snaps at center in throughout their career. It's not a guarantee who starts at center. Maybe the guy's not even on the roster right now, but Mack retiring really hurt the Niners. And as I'm getting through all these offensive line ranking video, I mean, you see one where Trent Williams is the best of all the offensive linemen, but you get through the rest and you take a look at the unit of Niners, I'm starting to get a little worried about the rest of that unit there. You know, McGlinchey's going to have to hold up health-wise. Aaron Banks, hopefully he steps up this year. Hopefully he's a good second-year player from Notre Dame here, because the rest of it's looking a little thin. Losing Laken Tomlinson, losing Mack to retirement. So, and the Jags, they could go with Shatley, who has experience at guard and center. You draft a center in the third round, a guy that feels like just a pure center. I think you got to start him. You know, I think he probably wins that battle as well. So Fortner, the rookie, probably gets a nod. And, I mean, he's not Creed Humphrey, but you saw the way the rookie Creed Humphrey played last year, so you never know. It could be better than this, kind of up in the air there. Austin Blythe, who hasn't really had that starting role for a few years now. He's with the Seattle Seahawks now. He comes in at 30. Mason Cole, who's with the Cardinals and with the Vikings last year, now with the Steelers. They gave him somewhat of a surprising contract. Not that it was that rich, but it wasn't really expecting. I believe it was a 3-year deal as well. He can play guard or center, and they do have Kendrick Green, who can play, again, center or guard. He struggled a little bit last year. And the way they paid Cole and the type of deal they gave him, it really feels like they're gearing up for him to be their starting center. And it looks like they're kind of set with the other positions in the offensive line somewhat. So, I think Cole will be their starting center. Yeah, he's kind of been a backup, a solid depth piece throughout his career. So it's hard to rank him super high. Steelers are pretty good at developing the interior guys, though, so we'll see. We're moving on. We had 2 Vikings guys pictured in a row, I just realized, even though the last one's now on the Steelers. But Justin Britt at 28, Texans, they have about 3 guys that can play center, but they all stay on the roster. So maybe a little bit of a position battle at the end, somewhat. I think Justin Britt gets the job. He comes in at 28. 27, John Feliciano coming from the Bills to the Giants, following Brian Daboll. Daboll brings him along. He's been a guard. He's been a career guard, but they felt very confident in moving him to center. And you got to trust Daboll there, what he's seen from Feliciano. And so a little bit up in the air on how he'll be at center. But the main problem for me is he hasn't played a whole lot, as much as you want him to, the last couple years. 500 or so snaps under that. So that's kind of a big problem. And, a little bit of a mystery at center, mainly not playing as many snaps as you want him to. That kind of weighs him down a little bit. Josh Myers is basically like ranking a rookie, played 200 or so, 260 or so snaps last year, and he was a rookie last year. Showed some promise when we did see him. I trust the Packers with development. Snapping the ball, Aaron Rodgers helps. It's just kind of like ranking a rookie here, almost. So I'm going to put him at 26. Garrett Bradbury of the Vikings at 25, which he could be replaced as well. They got a couple other guys that could take a spot. I think Bradbury starts day 1. Very solid run blocker. He's not down at 25 because of his run blocking. Based off that, he'd be a lot higher. But the pass protection for a center is pretty poor there from him so far. He was a former first-round pick. He had a weird play last year where he caught against the Packers, caught the ball, and was dominant after the catch. So maybe he should, kidding, but maybe he should switch to tight end, I was going to say, because center hasn't worked out. But Yeah, he hasn't really worked out as a pass protector. His job could be taken, but they got a new staff in there, so maybe that can change some things. So maybe he hits that upside that we're waiting for here. But again, he's a solid run blocker. Next up, the Bears add a Packers offensive lineman who's been a depth piece but had to fill in last year. A guy that can play guard or center. I believe he'll play center for the Chicago Bears, which the Bears offensive line is kind of a tough projection right now. I mean, they could put Patrick at guard. They can move things around very easily with the tackles, guards, moving the tackles to guards, because both the projected tackles can play guard. Unless we're talking Braxton Jones, I think he's a future tackle there. But so the Bears a little bit, tough projection. I think from what they've said, I think Patrick will play center. Hasn't been really a career starter, but he's looked pretty solid when he's played. So I'm going to put him at 24. Ethan Posich, that's a tough one. I think most people will project Nick Harris to be the starting center of the Browns. I think it's going to be Ethan Posich, who can play guard or center. The Browns officially have him listed at center. Doesn't mean a whole lot at this early stage, but it means a little bit. And, he was kind of a solid prospect out of LSU. It didn't really work out with Seattle, even though he was okay. He was okay at times. But the Browns, with that offensive line, they're surprisingly they move on from J.C. Treader, who was known as one of the better centers in football, and they have the best guard duo in football. Plug and play Postage in there. I think he's going to be pretty solid compared to what he used to be, maybe even better than this. So I put him at 23. It is tough, though, because he struggled, and then he might not actually be the starter. Again, Harris could be, so it's a little tough projection. The Broncos are a tough projection when it comes to their offensive line. I'm pretty confident with Bowles being the left tackle and Billy Turner being the right. Tom Compton could fill that right tackle or guard as well. And then you look at the guards and the centers, you kind of got some guys that are pretty interchangeable between Cushenberry, who's been at center. If Cushenberry doesn't start at center, I don't think he's going to start at all. But and then you have Miners and you have Glasgow in there as well. You got a number of guys. They got some pretty good depth. They got a number of young guys, Moody as well. But Cushenberry, who's looked pretty promising his first go with the Broncos, I thought struggled a little bit more than I thought last year, but still some upside. New staff in there. Again, it's up in the air who's going to start exactly where for them in the interior. I'm going to go Cushenberry, and could take a little bit of a step up last year because he struggled last year. Tyler Biotish, another young guy that could step up as well. Too many sloppy penalties from him last year, a little inconsistent, but the Cowboys good at developing these guys. He can continue to grow here. He's got to be a little bit more consistent. Moving on, Andre James at 20. Maybe a little bit surprising when the Raiders announced that they were going to go with James heading into last year. But it seems like they were confident in him, and he was kind of getting better as the year went on. So I think he kind of could continue to grow. Comes in at 20. A rookie at 19, which was maybe the most surprising draft pick of the draft. Remember us talking about it because Linderbaum is like purely an outside zone blocker, and the Ravens are kind of that a perfect example of a team that's not outside zone. Their man power scheme, their gap scheme, so it's going to be interesting, but I still like Linderbaum as a solid center day one, so I ranked him inside the top 20 predicting this upcoming year. Connor McGovern comes in at 18. I think the top 18 are pretty solid centers. We get into some, Linderbaum's going to be solid as well, but the top 18 are kind of, for the most part, kind of proven solid centers here. McGovern, who's got two solid guards next to him, definitely helps him out. Ted Karras, the Bengals, one of their big signings to play center. Tough thing with Karras is he was kind of a career backup, but Andrews, who kind of kept getting hurt, Karras would eventually start for him and played pretty solid. It was just the Patriots would always like Andrews over Karras. So going to the Bengals, it should be an upgrade for them. So that should help him a bit. Just interesting to see him as a starter, away from the Patriots as well. So we'll see how he does. See if the Bengals figured something out there. Top 16, Matt Hennessy was pretty solid for the Falcons last year and was kind of a position camp battle, kind of going into camp for the Falcons, but he kind of took over that role. Bradley Bozeman had to step in for the Ravens last year and was pretty solid. And the Panthers add him. They definitely improved their offensive line in general, adding Bozeman, Corbett, drafting Ekwonu. So pretty good job there. Brian Allen's been pretty consistent for the Rams. The Rams sometimes, and they're tough. I feel like it's all system. You can kind of plug anybody in there. They might be just as good as the last guy. That's kind of what it feels like right now. Brian Allen's been pretty solid for them. It sounds like the Dolphins are going to play former Cowboys guard Connor Williams at the center position, and he was actually a former tackle at one point throughout his career. But yeah, it sounds like they're going to play him at center. And they do look like they could be good at the guard and tackle position, so they were kind of at an opening at center, so it kind of makes sense to play them there. So a little bit up in the air and what to expect, but a very good young offensive lineman. I'm confident with him, so he comes in at 13. Top 12, Mitch Morse, veteran center of the Bills. He comes in at number 12 there, who has been solid for them. Pretty consistent. Eric McCoy of the Saints comes in at 11, another one of those young guys that can continue to kind of grow there. We kind of wondered if he'd be a guard or center when he came out a few years ago. Was dominant right away his rookie year, really. So he comes in at 11. Chase Rollier, number 10 of the Commanders. Yeah, we didn't see him play full snaps last year, unfortunately, but he's very solid. See why he got that contract there. Then Ryan Kelly at number 9 of the Colts, another pretty consistent center there of their very solid offensive line. He comes in at number 9. We're on to the top 8. A lot of these guys are really close, really the top 10 or so guys really close. Ben Jones, been super consistent for the Tennessee Titans. Definitely one of their strong pieces of their offensive line. You kind of know what you're going to expect from him. He comes in at 8. Ryan Jensen at 7. Maybe not as good as we would have thought from Jensen last year, but still obviously very solid. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a top 5 center at the end of the year because he's kind of felt like a top 3 even at some point. David Andrews at 6. You see how great a healthy David Andrews is. Very dominant for the Patriots last year. Projecting him to stay healthy and continue to play at a high level. So you see how good of a center he is. Kind of guy that was forgotten about throughout his career because he has some injuries. Jason Kelce at number 5. Still very good. Maybe since he was elite, stepped down a little bit. And we thought maybe last year was his last year. Going to give it one more go here. And he comes in at number 5, still a phenomenal career. My top 4 centers for the 2022 season go Frank Ragnow at number 4. Got that big contract. You see why. Very good young center with a lot of upside still. So he's still trying to, and you could argue him at 1. And he could get to that point, I should say. Creed, this was tough because Creed Humphrey kind of maybe felt like the best one last year. So he could be the best again. It's just tough to go against like the proven veteran guys that I know for sure, if they're on the field, will be very dominant. But Creed Humphrey, impressive last year. He seemed to slip through the draft. He really only slipped through the draft because he's a lefty. I think he's the first starting lefty center ever that's worked out, which is kind of weird. So maybe teams put too much stock into that. Or not enough stock in him being good. But, yeah, Humphrey was dominant for a rookie last year. I'm going to go Rodney Hudson at 2. He's just got to stay on the field. And he's just still so talented. Could be the number 1 guy. And you see it when he was off the field last year. The Cardinals were a disaster, really, without Rodney Hudson. So I got to keep him in the top 2 here because he could be one. It's just, are we going to get I think he missed a game or 2 because COVID protocols. I don't think that's going to happen again. So I like Rodney Hudson again. Corey Linsley, who's been super consistent. Last year what he had with the Packers is he was considered number 1 center in football. He goes to Chargers, has a really good year, and we're going for another year here. Again, you just know what you're going to get from him. He's still young, still fresh, very, very talented. So felt good about putting him 1. But the top 3 is kind of like 1A, 1B, 1C. Again, you can argue Ragnow there. I mean, Kelce, even at his age, you could put him up there. Even guys down to Jensen, we see him play like a number 1 center before. So I mean, some good centers, better than I thought here. And then there's some teams where it's a little bit of a battle, and there's some teams where it's a little rough, and there's some teams that just don't value center. Some teams kind of just look for, all right, can the guy snap the ball consistently, and can he keep his body in front of a guy? That's kind of what they look for, and then you don't spend a lot of money doing it. I guess I can understand that. We've seen quite a few centers, guys that we've considered decent, that had some snap problems, though, especially recently as well. So I'm for just going and, not maybe overspending, but going and make sure you find the right guy to connect with your quarterback there. So these teams up here you see on your screen are pretty good shape for that. They don't have too much to worry about, so that's great. Really, the Cardinals just got to hope Hudson's on the field for them because it was night and day. Like the team was different when they had some snap problems, so that would do it. But if Hudson's on the field for the Cardinals every game last year, I mean, they have multiple more wins, at least maybe 2, I'd say. So, that's definitely an interesting one. So hopefully he can stay healthy. But that's going to wrap up the center rankings. We did guards recently, then we did right tackles, left tackles, we did quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, all of the offense. We got it done. We're on to defense now. starting next week, Monday, so I can't wait for that. A lot going on with the franchise tag stuff. Jesse Bates, will he be traded? People are going to be talking about that a lot. Orlando Brown. We got you covered on Twitter, talking about all that stuff, connecting with you guys, so check it out at GoDows NFL. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on for the full NFL coverage here at the GoDows. Be much appreciated. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.